Okay, thanks everybody for coming. So this is the launch of the third of our series of artists in residence at Fineshade Wood. The programme's called The Forest is a Museum, and it sees three artists in residence over 2 years from 2018 to 2020. First, Edwina Fitzpatrick, who's also here tonight. The second was Justin Carter. The fourth is going to be Abigail Lane and Lala Meredith Ruler. And the third is our project, which is Simon Blackmore, Anthony Ball, and Steve Simmons. Their new work, The Algorithm in the Forest, is a video and sound installation exploring how natural systems have inspired algorithms that impact how we experience our daily lives. Hopefully we're going to explain what that means. So I think we'll start. So for those that have been to these talks before, quite often we have artist speakers and another speaker. Well, our project are three artists, and I think they're quite different. So we're going to have each of them, introduce the practice as a whole, and then with each of them we'll explore a particular element that's come up during the residency, and then at the end we can go back and see the work, perhaps in a different light from earlier. Okay. So do you want to go?
Yeah, I'll just give you a bit of an introduction to our work. So we've been making sculptures that kind of explore our relationship, human relationship with technology and nature, or the kind of dialogue between all of those three kind of areas for probably 15 years ago. So this is like going back to like 2003, 2004. And we've made quite a few things over the years. This is it was called the Log 1K, and it's one of the earliest things that kind of had this wooden aesthetic that we kind of have used a lot, and you can see elements of in the exhibition. And this was a sort of a DIY laptop that we kind of performed with, where we had this disc spinning, making sounds, and we used to go and take on the kind of people that were using laptops and try and compete with making electronic music with some very bare electronics. So we didn't really come from a particularly technical background. We're kind of tinkerers, but this thing was super lo-fi, just a disc spinning, some switches, but it kind of made enough sound and clicking noises to pass off as music. So that was a kind of quite a significant piece. And then we kind of ended up exploring the process of craft and woodwork through this piece, Sound Lathe, which is probably a couple years later. And this is when we first started working with Steve, actually, which about 2006 or 7, I think. 2004? No, 2004, yeah. And so this piece, I should really show videos, but I didn't want to do a massive long talk because there's a lot to talk about with the new work. So this piece we kind of you've probably all seen one of these, but it's a kind of a lathe which we turned into a kind of instrument to make electronic music. So it had these sort of sensors on it that picked up the changing shape of the wood and kind of converted those shapes into sound. So we were interested in this idea of performance and sound making and making the process of making sound really difficult for ourselves, I think, generally, and just trying to grapple with something moving, something changing, and how can we turn this into sound? And that's something actually we've done a lot of in this exhibition. There it is again. And we've also done a lot of, made hundreds of these things. I think there must be a lot in the world, but we after the iLog, a few years later, we made a thing, after the log I showed you earlier, we made these smaller portable ones and worked with people to design your own small version. And this one was a solar iLog that changes light into sound. And yeah, again, the idea of a small kind of handheld musical instrument. And then we've also worked on some very big pieces of work. So this is a piece called Flow that we did in 2012 for the Olympics, and it sat on the River Tyne. And I didn't have an exterior shot, but there's a water wheel that kind of went around outside when we're lucky, with the tide going up and down, and it powered these musical instruments that made sound from water in different ways. And so that was kind of one of the larger scale pieces we did. And we're sort of collecting the water, and you could kind of see the different levels of acidity and salinity changing as the river went up and down, and then hear the sound of it. And then one thing we wanted to show you very quickly was our last time at Fineshade Wood, which we figured out was 2013, so it was just after we did Flow. And we did some work that was kind of responding to a sawmill at the time, and we got really interested in this idea of the kind of waveforms you get on saws and how they look a bit similar to sound waves. And we started, we did this sort of performance where we had saws making sounds, and we did it in Bridgestock, the village hall, didn't we? Yeah, a performance. And the thing, we were just in here a minute ago looking to try and find some photos of some new pieces of work, because this work actually turned into a touring show, and then we've got a permanent sort of installation in a science museum in Bradford, which takes some of these ideas further. So Fineshad's been really important to us as a kind of place to develop new ideas, and it was quite amazing that we're just laughing at how this kind of playing around with saw waves led to like years of doing more of it. For better or worse, some of the things we've kind of done, and they've dragged on a bit, and we've but we used this idea a lot. So when we came here, we kind of really wanted to explore something really different, and get away from, I think, because we'd made lots of big objects and lots of sculptures since this sort of, that was one thing. Yeah, we decided to do something quite different and not look at craft and not look at making objects, but looking into the forest, and kind of wanted to get our hands dirty and look at what's happening on the forest floor. So that was, and yeah, I think it's probably quite a good time to hand over to Tony to talk about our interest in ants and how we kind of got onto that. Should I? I'll change. Oh, actually, Steve. Yeah, you do that.
Right. Yeah. So I'm just going to talk about. It moves a little bit away from our practice, but just to tell you of our way into being interested in ants, I suppose. But yeah, my son was basically told me that he spends a lot of his lunch hour watching ants in the playground. So we both actually got into ants. We started watching loads of ant videos, and then we started keeping ants. And so this happened at Christmas, really. And kind of in light of this project, I thought, well, yeah, it would be quite cool to get into ants, maybe, because we're doing a project in the forest. Maybe it could, maybe it could inform that a bit. So we've now ended up with 4 ant colonies on a shelf in our living room, which me and my son care for, which has become like a little bit of a, it started as quite good fun, but now it's become quite stressful because it's a bit of a responsibility having these life forms to take care of. And I really got into ants, and my son probably knows more about ants than me. So by the way, are there any ant experts here? Right, good, that's okay. Right, we're not, but a cool thing that happened on the way here, we were loading up the van, and this queen ant landed in the back of the van, which I put in this petri dish to. You can keep them like this. Basically, ant keepers, they collect queen ants from the wild because thousands come out of the nest, and mostly they get eaten by birds or whatever. And you can keep them in something like this or a test tube with enough moisture. They will stay alive in here. It's very similar to being in a hole. They would go and dig a small hole, and they would stay in there until they've reared 5 or 10 eggs into worker ants, which then they can send out the following year to bring them food. So from this point, she will now just be concentrating on laying some eggs. So I'll just hand around. If you just be careful, don't shake around, or just to keep it flat. And earlier in the gallery, a king ant landed on our laptop, didn't it?
Yeah.
So it's quite odd. I think it's just the time of year when they're flying. But yeah, so this little bit of film here in the show is from our formicarium at home, and this is the queen here. The queen is raising eggs, which she normally sits near, and the eggs will be cared for and tended to by the others, and they'll move them around the formicarium to to different parts on a daily basis wherever it's the right temperature and the right levels of moisture. So the queen just waves her antennae around, and it seems to me like that the queen was somehow commanding the workers to do stuff, because how do they know what to do or when to move the grubs or the eggs or the pupa? How do they know to do these things? And they have this ceremony as well. These are pupae, so the eggs turn into grubs, which they feed, and then they turn into pupae, which have chrysalises. But at that point, they sometimes cluster soil around the pupa and then remove it again and put it back. It's like a weird ceremony they have, which I don't know what the function of it is. And also being able to watch them in the formicarium, you can see when they get alarmed, they have all these interesting behaviours. There'll be one whose job it seems to be to wake the others up, because they spend a lot of time sleeping, so one will be on alarm duty and things like this. Anyway, to cut a long story short, we thought it'd be interesting to study these on the forest floor and in the wild, which isn't as easy as it might sound, because it's actually quite hard to find them until you kind of tune in to them on the forest floor. So we spent a lot of time just walking around the woods with our cameras trying to find them, didn't we?
We did,
and
yeah.
Just trying to get good film of them. So this is using a software, like a process of capturing difference between frames to capture their trails. And from this point, we've been looking at different ways to sonify these kinds of movements, even though this film is silent in the show. But
and and then obviously, Steve, do you want, we're good. Yeah, do you want to talk about the trails?
Ants are really, really interesting. We would like looking at them in the forest and trying to imagine what they might be doing. And saying the same, trying to imagine the queen ant and giving instructions. And it's obvious that how are they passing information? They do not have the same expression as we do and language as far as we know. But they seem organised. Ants seem organised. They make trails. They go off. They find food. They bring it back. They farm. They farm things. They collect stuff. And they also do things. Tony was always saying about how one of the pupas might become a food storage. So they have this whole notion of what we take as individualism is completely. They do not have this. There's a completely weird, for us, or different way of looking at things. It's a much more collective way of working. And so we're going to say, this is interesting. How did they find routes around things? And this is why Tony is spending so long making these trails. We're trying to imagine the trails. Where are they going? And what are they doing? Now, the important thing about the ant trail is that they literally leave a trail behind them. They literally leave a chemical trail,
pheromones.
Thank you, tired. My speech is going to go. They leave a pheromone trail behind them. And this trail evaporates over a period of time. But it does leave this short little trail. So if an ant who has been assigned to go and find food, goes off, finds food, comes back, it leaves this is where it is trail, which other ants then go, and off they go. They go and follow, the collector ants go and follow this is where the food is from, which reinforces it. So this is how, from one ant, this trail gets built up. It's like, imagine you're walking through some fresh snow. I always have to use fresh snow all the time, also, haven't I? Oh, you leave a little trail, you erase it, yeah, then other people follow, it just gets bigger and bigger. Apart from, in terms of ants, there is the trail evaporates. So it's a bit like a constant falling of snow. So it disappears, your trail will disappear. If you come back a few hours later, it's gone. So it needs to be constantly worked over in order to be strong enough for other ants to follow. Maybe this sounds a little bit straight and unnecessary, and what's the point of that? But what it means is that if there's an object in the way of this trail, or something, a leaf falls in the way of this trail, and ants to start, oh, it's a leaf, oh my God. And they start going around it in panic. We've seen this. What they're doing is trying to find the trail. And they'll go around and they'll find the one on the other side. And they'll go off, back on it, I'll get the food, come back, around the leaf, blah, blah, blah. And the long route around the leaf the trail is left for longer, so it evaporates, so it gets weaker. So those trails which should take a longer period disappear off, and the shorter trail is left. So that's how ants find very quick ways to things. Beautiful, it emerges. They do not go back, and there's no planning committee, a little message coming back. They do not have a little, board of, oh, a leaf has landed here, we're moving ants around. But they find these routes really naturally. Now this is kind of, for me, this is a thing called emergence, and I have looked at this for years. This is fascinating. This is really exciting to see how, as an artist, how something can grow out of some very simple rules. And in this case, it's optimization. It's ways of finding information out, routes around data or routes around the real world. And it gets used. So computer scientists have always, it says on the side, there was this expression, it says something about mimicking and copying ideas, modelling. Computer scientists are always looking at the real world and going, oh, what's happening? Or is it something I can copy? Is it something that is cleverer than me? And ants are one of the examples. So there are some good examples where routes have been optimized. What's the postal delivery? So how do you get, or a travelling salesperson? You've got 100 cities. What's the most efficient way of travelling around the cities? And one of the systems that gets used is this thing called ant optimization. And it's based on these virtual ants leaving pheromone trails. Yeah, believe me, honestly, you're looking at me as if like, what is he talking about? So this is something which we found kind of interesting and got slightly excited about. So here we go. Let's do it. Sorry, it's a bit blurry. So Simon actually we found someone who'd made a bit of software or written a bit of code that did this, and we went, oh, let's have some fun with it and see if we can make it do graphics or make music or do something else with. So I'm going to demonstrate it live. So this is a map, obviously, that I've pulled up. We've got these little dots. These are going to be the cities or the nodes of food that we're going to go on a journey. And this is what when we ran a workshop with, what's the school? Newton Rose School. We got the children to imagine their school run. And you'll see they put like Morrison's on Domino's and the school, all sorts of stuff. And then we said, right, can you draw the quickest route around it? So let's do that here quickly. So we're in Fineshade Wood. I'm going to put we're going to choose a few locations where we're going to go to. So my sister lives in Stanford, we're going to go there. I'm going to, I need a few more. So Sudbury Lodge is somewhere there. My local knowledge has really improved. Thrapston, go to the Chippy, and your office. So we've got all of these, what have I got? 10 of them. You wanted to do more, didn't you?
10's good.
10's all right, okay. Where else are we going to go? Who lives where? Go on, shout out.
Corby.
Oh, Corby, all right, yeah, there we go. There?
Laxton.
Thanks.
Laxton.
You may need to give me...
In the middle.
Laxton, thank you. My knowledge isn't that good. Sorry. Anyway, we've got these other ones too. These ones I need to place. Those ones up here. Oh, Thrapston, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, so these...
Shout a few more out.
5 more places. Can be further afield. Can go miles away.
Can we have Rushden in school?
Rushden, the school. Oh, there we go, yeah. I found that quite quickly.
It's Rushden.
4 more.
Rushden.
Is that the right one?
No. Sudbury. So near the cottages.
It's near Thrapston.
Am I being stupid?
It's too small, probably, is it?
Yeah, I don't think it's on there. I think it's right.
Up a bit, left a bit, right a bit.
Yeah.
There, you happy with that?
Yeah, that'd be good, yeah.
3 more.
Uppingham.
Uppingham. Oh, and that is
Just we passed
there.
Uppingham.
Yes.
There you go.
I haven't really spent the last half hour just staring at the map to try to speed this up. And where have we got those ones? We've got these two. Let's make it a hard, a weird shape. Arundel. So if we make it too much of a round, it will be too easy to solve. So let's. Dean, can you swim in the Dean? Can you swim in any of these places? I like swimming.
You can do, yeah.
Right, I like swimming. There we go. We're gonna go there. And last one.
So can we just?
So,
Yeah, go
So
on.
where is Royston on the map? Do you want? Could you point it out?
I've got it up, and it's that.
Sorry, we zoomed out too much.
We need to
kind of
have it
thought
on
people
there.
might travel a long way to
school
go.
on the right there.
Oh no, it's in Rushden. It's there.
It's Rushden.
Oh, it's Rushden.
Oh, rush.
Are we off the map? Yeah, it's off the
Oh,
map.
did they come along?
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
it is. Yeah, bit lower, below Kettering.
Oh right, okay.
somewhere.
Broughton, Burton.
For now, that's.
That'll do it.
Yeah.
Okay, and there was the one left somewhere. That one is just random. Is that random? No, that
That's
one was
good.
shouted out.
That's good.
That one was random. Is that one random?
So yeah, just to repeat, the problem is how, if you were like a travelling salesman, is a famous name for the problem, how would you get to all of these different places the most efficient way? So without wasting any time. And this is something that's used by, like, I'm guessing like every logistics company are kind of using algorithms like this to try and solve the quickest way to deliver all the parcels around all these houses. So the ants are going to try and figure it out.
So you can see now, our ants don't actually follow maps, unfortunately, but you'll get the idea because we wanted to use it for something else. So if you look at this, you can go, oh, right, I'll go. This is the route I'll go around. So what the system actually does is have virtual ants in there. I think it's 40 running on this one, and inside the code, the ants. I'm going to use quotes. They travel, they jump to it, they go to each of the towns and leave a little trail, and they keep on doing this until a best solution appears, and then it will do it again, and then again, and eventually you'll end up with the same solution appearing each time. So I'm going to hit run, fingers crossing. There we go. So that's the first idea. And then in a few seconds it'll give us another one. So here it's thinking about it. It's going, oh, which one of these is the right one? Eventually it'll turn blue when it comes to a conclusion of the optimized route around our spots. I've put it to spending 3.5 seconds thinking about each one. We can control this. It goes really fast, or it goes really slow. I've slowed it down. There we go. So that is what it thinks is the best route by line of sight around these places. There you go. How are we doing this to sound? What else can we do? Well,
Shall we try and explain the sound, the others kind of mapping? Because obviously this is the sort of idea that ants are brilliant at, like navigating through these sort of spatial maps. And we started thinking when we were down here last time, we were kind of brainstorming this, and we thought, well, what other kind of things could we start mapping that aren't necessarily geographic? So we started to think about, we did a food map and did kind of axes with crunchy and soft, and kind of had the ants mapping kind of areas around kind of a menu kind of thing. And then this one happened in a workshop just the other day, wasn't it? It's 2 days ago.
Yeah.
The day before yesterday. And do you want to explain it, Tony? Because you worked on it with...
I think, we were looking up some different speeches, and we wanted a sort of significant and appropriate speech or transcript to take apart and think about some words, because we've been using sound, so we thought wouldn't it be interesting to use like words basically. I think James suggested Greta Thunberg's UN speech about environmental catastrophe. So we had this really good discussion about how we were going to take this speech apart and what quotes we were going to choose and how we were going to arrange them on this kind of conceptual map, which was a really weird thing to do, actually. So we decided on different emotional value in the words, and then references to the self and other. So things like,
we treated the drawing to
stuff like deforestation is not to do with the self, it's to do with other. And when she was saying the word deforestation, she was almost crying, so that rated high on the emotional scale, so that would have ended up here. But when she's very not emotional and just talking about facts, they'd be right over there, and she'd talk about herself, and those quotes would be down there. So we had this cluster of really emotional phrases which are up here. And then we put it through the process.
This is something which I've used a lot as part of the design process. And what it does is makes you discuss and argue about the content. Now here we really struggled over this emotional access because she sounds she sounds emotional, angry. Yeah, you'll hear when we do it. So each of these cities we have now allocated a sound clip to, and when so the system finds the optimized route and then plays out that route, and it will keep them repeating until it comes to a conclusion. I just hope we will just have sound, and we'll just play it. 3 minutes.
A great number of politicians houses fires in the Netherlands and mass extinction of fertile topsoil. Our houses need to start acting 10,000 times faster. I want you to act as if the house was on fire. People like me, we who cannot vote. Lots of insects are great numbers to listen to us. Disastrous trends. And many of us, millions of children, are taking it to the streets almost every part of fire. Many of us. A great number of politicians will change almost every part. I want you to act as if the house was on fire. A fertile topsoil. Lots of insects. Deforestation are disastrous. You need to listen to us. Like me, we who cannot vote. Millions of children are taking it to the streets. Is up to 10,000 times. Our houses need to start acting number of politicians. I want you to act up to 10,000 times faster. We are in the midst of a sixth mass extinction. But when your house will be affected the most, and many of us require some level of panic. People like me, we who cannot vote. Lots of infrastructure fertile topsoil. You need to listen to us. Our leaders need to start the mass expansion. When your house is on fire, that does require some level of panic. As if the house was on fire. Up to 10,000 times. The great number of politicians almost every part, and many of us by this crisis. Millions of children are taking it to the streets. We who cannot vote, people like me, you need to listen to us. These are all lots of insects. We are in the midst of a sixth mass expansion. When your house is on fire, that does require some level of panic. I want you to act as if the house was on fire. Up to 10,000 times. The great number of politicians almost every part, and many of us by this crisis. Millions of children are taking it to the streets. We who cannot vote, people like me, you need to listen to us. These are lots of insects and wildlife. When that does require some level of a great number of politicians, almost every part. I want you to act as if 10,000 times faster. That we are in the midst of six leaders acting accordingly. Lots of insects and wildlife forest. These are all disastrous trends. You need to listen to us. We who cannot vote. People like me. Millions of children are taking it to the streets. When your house is on fire, a great number of politicians almost every part. I want you to act as if the house was 10,000 times faster. That we are in the midst of six leaders acting accordingly. Lots of insects and wildlife forest. These are all disastrous trends. You need to listen to us. We who cannot vote. People like me. Millions of children are taking it to when your house is on fire. A great number of politicians almost every part. I want you to act as if the house was 10,000 times faster. That we are in the midst of six leaders acting accordingly. Lots of insects and wildlife forest. These are all disastrous trends. You need to listen to us. We who cannot vote. People like me. Millions of children are taking it to the streets, and many of us will be affected the most by this crisis.
So it starts off chaotic, it starts resolving itself according to the rules, and turns into a much more coherent experience. Yeah.
Like James was saying, it is difficult to listen to, like we think, and the duration of it is particularly, like, well, it's, I don't know, I guess it's defined by how long it takes to solve the problem, doesn't it? So yeah, we find it quite difficult to listen to as well.
There's two. There's a faster one. It's about
Yeah.
Yeah. So using the rules to make something new is one of the things we've been exploring. What else?
Have you got a musical
Yeah,
now?
right,
Yeah.
okay, yeah. We can learn musical.
Or maybe we've got the one that.
My speakers aren't too good. I've lost their.
And the boys.
Oh yeah, the Boyds.
Do you want me to play musical and go to down, or just
Whichever
move
you
away
want.
from this? I mean,
Yeah.
there's two. That's a different. We'll go on for time. Okay, we'll do a musical one.
So one of the things we were looking at through this is just this idea of how visual imagery and kind of tracking things like ants and tracking these paths can make music, and there's kind of quite a long history of that through kind of experimental scores of like John Cage and Christian Wolff in the 50s and 60s, who kind of took apart the idea that you'd have a linear score and you might have something that's more something that you traverse a bit more, and we're kind of playing around with those ideas. So this is one of them, and I think you're going to show this now, aren't you? This is one I did with Warren, actually. Yeah. So this is another one that came out of the workshop, where we had the idea of how we just picked a load of sounds that were fairly at random, and then we plotted them on whether they were noisy or melodic, and then whether they were kind of short staccato sounds or more droney sounds. And then we kind of listened to the ant algorithm sort of going around finding the path around, in the hope that maybe you'd kind of get some sort of, like Steve said a minute ago, a cohesive sound or something, a kind of journey through this, the different types of sounds. So we can have a listen to that. Yeah,
So that's how it starts off, and then you can actually look at the whole thing there and get some more coherent and according to how it's all been laid out towards the end.
Yeah, so we see them as kind of lots of different studies into how these sort of videos could generate sound. So would it be good to show the guitar one quickly? The ants on the guitar. Have you got that there?
Or Boyd's.
And Boyd's, yeah, those two I was thinking.
Angry ants?
It's
Or do Boyd's because it shows the tracking?
Yeah, do Angry Ants first.
Okay.
But yeah, so this is the idea of we filmed some logs, ants on a log, who I think got quite angry, but we I tried a process of just each ant as it moves, it triggers a different guitar sample. If you play it, I can probably explain it while it's playing it.
This is great. We've got all the ants footage we need. They should sort of like trace out the objects they're walking over in a way, but.
So each new movement is a kind of different teeny little sample, and we kind of quite like the fact that it sounded quite ant-like. The kind of little, and that leaf moving there was that kind of tinkling you hear there. probably shouldn't be there, but it's quite a clear kind of, you can see how the visuals sync up with the music that's been generated, or the sound. And then Boyd's, let's have a look at how that looked. Yeah, so we did a school workshop a couple of weeks ago, and we wanted to try out all the ideas we were playing with, and we thought, how can we get the kids in the group to do a kind of simple study that's a little bit like ants moving, because obviously, and we thought about how can we get them to drag pheromones behind them and get them sniffing on the floor, and it seemed really complicated because the ants' behaviour, even though it's quite simple, it's quite hard to simulate leaving pheromones. So what we did was we tried another emergent kind of thing that's called Boyd's, where you have a certain rules where you flock together and you try and stay near your neighbour, and when you simulate it on a computer, it looks like a lot of birds flocking and that kind of thing, and it gets used in kind of film, special effects, and that kind of thing. So, and it's got some really simple rules, just sort of like flocking and come together, go apart. What are the other rules we had? That's basically it.
Follow the one in front of you.
Yeah, don't touch each other. And then they made paper hats, which you can't actually see that clearly because they're kind of covered in circles, so we could see them clearly. And then we did a musical process, which is a bit odd, but we tried just as they all kind of play different sound waves, and then as they get lower, the sound's lower, and then as they go higher, it gets higher. But it kind of just turns into a bit of a whirlwind sort of sound, which you can hear. Yeah, so all of the pieces are quite fresh to us, really. They're all very kind of experimental. We're not too precious about any of them, really. They're all kind of just different things we've tried in kind of to combine this idea of movement and sound and the study of kind of intelligence emerging from very simple processes. Actually, have we got it might be nice to show the bot one as well, mightn't it? The light-seeking bot, yeah.
So this is the reason, that we see them as sketches, don't we? That's why they're all different studies. We're going to pick this apart for the next however many years. What's it called? Which one do you want?
Study.
The one with the LEDs?
Yeah, 13 or 14.
So in the workshop...
Not that one, do the one in the forest, yeah, 13.
The stick robot.
Yeah, that's a nice one, isn't it? Because this is quite intelligent.
Yeah, so we made some random, like, brush stick bot things which jiggle around randomly. And then we made this Bratenberg robot, which is a very simple robot which displays kind of emergent behaviours when it works, but it's pretty much the simplest robot you can make. This one was made to be scared of light and for the leg to drop off at specific moments. So it's got two eyes, which means it can kind of guide itself towards darkness, so it kind of heads into the undergrowth at any given opportunity, which is quite frustrating when you're trying to do anything with it, because it kind of like goes to dark areas where you don't want it to go. It might have been more conducive to make one that was attracted to light, but this one avoids light, but it's more like an insect, like a running away from you, which is quite nice. So yeah, quite good fun.
Any questions?
Yeah, so I think before we go back and have another look at the work, if you want to, but we could open up some questions. But the first question came from the school workshop, which I thought was a really excellent question, which was, this is all great and everything, but why do we care so much about ants? And you touched on it a little bit, but I thought your answer to the school was better. if you can remember what that was. Put you on the spot.
It was.
Well,
we were interested in the idea of. I mean, Greta's speech is really poignant because it's this idea of there's a huge arthropod decline, and we were kind of thinking through how we wanted to kind of think about that in some ways, and just kind of look around the forest floor and get people to think about their behaviour, what they're doing, and I don't know. There's this kind of strange thing happening in the world at the moment where arthropods are declining, yet we're stealing their ways of being and their ideas to use for kind of lifestyles, and they're kind of adopting these patterns in computers, but the kind of real things are dying, which is kind of quite a crazy thing. And we kind of looked into it quite a lot as to what that's kind of about, why that's happening, and Tony's done probably the most research about how it's mainly to do with climate change.
Yeah, because we were trying to think how that affected Fineshade Woods really, but I guess we don't really think about the ants and the creatures under our feet, and specifically ants do quite well in harsh conditions, and they're actually thriving in arthropod decline because they sort of take the place of other organisms, because they can sort of zoom in into these spaces, and some of them can deal with changes in temperature quite well, but that's a temporary situation really. They're just very successful organisms, and far more successful in humans. There's like trillions more of them than humans. And there's this interesting fact which, or I'm not sure it is a fact, but you might have heard that the total weight of ants outweighs humans, but I'm not sure that's entirely true, but it's a nice idea. There's certainly a lot more of them than humans, and yeah, just the fact that a queen, that queen ant we just saw, will live hopefully 30 years. So that's kind of almost equivalent of a human living 2,500 years. If you think of a generation, one ant will last 1 year. So that's equivalent of a human living 2,000 odd years, I suppose. So they're interesting organisms in that way to make a metaphor about. But yeah.
So any questions from anybody?
Can you talk a little bit more about the actual installation and how you kind of decided, and the actual sound pieces as well? Can you talk a little bit about how you decided to install them?
Yeah, well, the horns are from they're sort of a work we've toured around, and we call it it used to be called our 9-volt sound system, so it's like a low energy sound system, which we've actually modified it to be a normal sound system now, pretty much. But we've just used it as a way of playing sounds with our works, because it's just they're very directional. Projection, they project sound very directionally, so they really lended themselves to being installed in this long corridor-like space, because if you walk around a bit you might notice that the sound literally gets bounced around a little bit like a laser, I suppose. So we thought it'd be quite interesting to use that. So they're kind of localized near the projection, but actually it kind of gets bounced around a little. So,
and we really wanted to work with this kind of floor type projection, because we spent a lot of time obviously looking down at the ants, and then we were looking down on the kids being buoyed, and I think the whole work was, we did actually have some ideas. In fact, there's one drone footage of me running around a field, which we were going to do more work with drones and look at human patterns, and possibly the car park and ideas like that, but we kind of...
we really wanted that sort of superimposed human movement and then ant movement and make them into this thing, didn't we? But it didn't quite work out, because we weren't allowed to use the drone overhead here anyway. But we did get Simon running around the field briefly. Yeah.
And are there different videos on each different, that's what we couldn't work out, because we weren't there long enough?
Yeah.
There are like 15 actual studies spread out over the whole.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
They range from 10 seconds to 4 minutes or something. So,
do you make much in the way of aesthetic choices when you generated, like when thinking about these people after the Void piece? It's great sound, but did you make an aesthetic choice about that? When it came out, were you satisfied with it, or do you mix it? Do you fill it out with levels and things, or do you just leave it as is?
We kind of added a bit of reverb to some of them, didn't we?
Some
of the maps, yeah. But yeah, we really like the idea that the kind of algorithms and the ants has kind of taken control of the sound as much as possible. So we did actually, when we first arrived, we were kind of like, oh, this would be great to make some sounds from ants, and we weren't actually quite sure how to do it, so we just felt like moving our mouse in time with the ant, thinking that would sound good, and then we actually figured out better ways of doing it. So we kind of I think we became pretty strict to just the algorithms, handing it over to those processes really.
Yeah, we're quite functionalist like that, aren't we? With sound, we don't kind of more into the sort of generative outcome rather than adding too much aesthetic layers over, but we do a little bit, I suppose. We select and stuff.
Although I think later iterations we could change the way we're synthesizing the sound. So these are the quite early sketches. So although we won't mess around with the outcome, we'll go back and change the raw set.
Yeah.
So we'll try other synthesis systems and see how they match. We may actually change the graphics completely or the raw. So this is like very early. We're still going early. We sat back. We finished about 4ish. Sat back and went, oh, we could follow any of these. Where were we going to run with now? We'll wait and see.
What was the kids' reaction to partake in this type of experiment?
Apparently they really loved making the robots. I think they enjoyed the whole day. We started the day by going to the forest with them, which was really great, and just walked around and made sure we spent a good bit of time just looking on the forest floor. And we did the maps, I think, which they enjoyed. We made the maps quite competitive, so it was like which group can find the best route and will the ants beat you, which seemed quite fun. And then we did the bots in the afternoon, which I think they probably enjoyed the most, because it's like, I don't know actually.
But Boyd's was really, they really enjoyed Boyd's.
Yeah.
I think.
I thought the Boyd's sound was quite good. It's a bit Doctor Who-ish.
It was, yeah. Yeah, I felt really creeped out by it, actually. It seemed like a scene from a horror movie or something. I wasn't.
Yeah.
I thought
it gave it a more sinister feeling than the reality of it. It was quite upbeat, wasn't it?
We made sure the video was quite dark, because there's a moment when one of the children just looks up at the camera and there's this sort of woo, and it's like imagine a spike coming from the air or something. It's kind of quite ominous. So yeah, I'm not sure. That's one of the interesting things about the sounds you're saying. That it's like it can give quite a dark, ominous sort of presence to some of the stuff, or
Can I just ask one more question? I'm just interested how you work as a team to this idea of this collaborative work. How do you all kind of function together?
very, very messily, I think, really. Yeah, we kind of.
It's not efficient exactly.
No.
I
We've done a lot this week.
We have. But we do labour over. We sort of all make decisions together. Then we maybe go off on one together, off on one in separate ways, and come back together.
Yeah, we're definitely not one of those sort of artist groups where it's like you're doing the programming, I'm on sound, and because everyone likes to kind of do a bit of everything, so it gets. I think that makes it really creative, because we're kind of always like sharing code and bouncing stuff around. But sometimes it'll be like it might result in doing the same thing slightly differently twice, sort of thing, and 3 times. Yeah. So it's quite, but it's great. Yeah, I mean it's.
I'm just amazed how much we can get done as a 3, and then sometimes it's like loads up here, and then other times I'm like, how little? I'm amazed how little 3 people can achieve. But we really choose the right resistor to use or something.
Yeah.
A lot of thought goes into something strange.
It takes a while to make decisions, like apparently simple decisions that sometimes can take a very long time to make.
Yeah, sometimes
is that when I get grumpy?
So where do you go from here?
Wow, that's a good point. I mean, yeah, Steve just mentioned, I think there's like a lot of different ideas in there that we can, we're saying how the last residency really took us, we kind of used that waveform thing a lot, and I think there's, a lot in this. As I mentioned a little bit earlier, I really like that idea that, what does it mean to take an efficient natural system and simulate it and then control the whole of human population with those systems, algorithms are kind of so powerful in controlling what we buy, how we're behaving, monitoring us. That kind of dynamic between the natural systems and the kind of the internet world or the technology world is quite complicated now. I think it, obviously, and it's something we've been talking about a bit. Actually, it felt, things feel very complex right now in terms of, all the way power works and politics, and you can kind of feel this sort of networky confusion around, and so it feels kind of the right territory to be looking at, because I think there's maybe some answers there, but I'm still quite confused by by it. As
Yeah, I mean, like really, because this has been a residency, we've only just really got a chance to look at the work, because it's literally 2 hours ago we cleared out our laptops and went into the exhibition and thought, oh right, okay, this is an exhibition now, because we've just been working in there, haven't we, making the work. So it takes a while to digest the work, doesn't it, I suppose, and work out what it actually is after going through this process.
And we'll have our own excitement. So I'm excited about composing maps. I'm actually excited about, we wanted to do the throwback books for ages actually. So,
yeah,
we'll see.
Yeah, we have to thank James and Firmin Woods, because we've got a lot of ideas to kind of run with in a way. Yeah, it's been
very exciting. Thank you very much.
Leave it there.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So if we head back over, maybe you'll see something more or less in the work. And then, we said 8:30, and we want to be as efficient as the ants, so we've got 15 minutes.
But do come and ask questions, please.